One is that the idea that Christ said that he was leaving. He didn't say he was going to die. Okay, and in the Dropbox, I'll put later tonight or tomorrow morning, and I intended to put it earlier, but I didn't do it. But I will put this very interesting article about Buddhists and Hindus and their experiences with Christ. Okay, because they have documentary evidence that Christ was in India for the 16 years that he disappeared from the Christian world. Okay. He disappeared from age 12 to age 29 or something like that. And so the Buddhists say that he became a Buddhist monk. And Buddhism at that time was already a 500-year-old spiritual tradition, right? And that he was in India. And so there's a very interesting article, and if you follow the link to the actual article on the internet, you'll find there's 5 videos, one by the BBC and some others, including one with the Dalai Lama, where they're all talking about this thing. And it's very interesting. And so that'll be in the Dropbox for tonight, and that's in handouts. In the Dropbox, it's under handouts, and then it's by date with 6-digit number representing month, day, and year. Okay, but one of the important concepts here is that Christ said that he had to leave so that the Paraclete could come, and the Paraclete is equivalent to the Holy Ghost. And the point is that okay, so let me just read from Edinger here. It'll be a little easier. He's reading from the Jerusalem Bible, or referring to the Jerusalem translation. He says, "It is for your own good that I am going." He doesn't say dying. He says, "It is for your own good that I am going, because unless I go, the Paraclete, unless I go, the Advocate, the Paraclete, which ultimately is the Holy Ghost, will not come to you. But if I do go, I will send him to you. I shall ask the Father, and he will give you another Advocate, Paraclete, to be with you forever, that Spirit of truth, whom the world can never receive, since it neither sees nor knows him. But you know him, because he is with you, he is in you. I will not leave you orphans. I will come back to you. In a short time, the world will no longer see me, but you will see me, because I will live and you will live, and you will live. Because I will live and you will live. On that day, you will understand that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you." And so what he's saying is that as long as his followers were projecting these ideas on him, then they didn't believe it was in them. But if he left and he sent the Holy Ghost back, then that Holy Ghost could occupy all of them. That was the Spirit. And so then we, through Christ, we're saying that we become the incarnation of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost through the Holy Ghost. And that's what he's saying. And so here's a very interesting paragraph. The coming of the Paraclete we can understand clinically. Now, this is Edinger talking about psychological, dealing with people in clinical therapy sessions. The coming of the Paraclete we can understand clinically as an image of the resolution of the archetypal transference. Thus, at the conclusion of an analysis, when the issue of the resolution of the transference is uppermost, the analyst must convey precisely the same message. I must go, and it is to your advantage that I go, and unless I go, your direct inner relation to the self cannot appear. And in order to promote that inner direct relation to the self, we have to encourage active imagination. In the later phases of analysis, active imagination is the primary agency for the resolution of the transference. Active imagination is the evocation of the Paraclete. So, what he's saying is that somehow you must have within your own unconscious, okay, and I don't know, we can talk about active imagination if you want to, but active imagination is where you put yourself inside yourself, in your psyche, and let things happen. And what happens is someone comes to you and shows you the transpersonal self. Okay, now in my case, I had a woman come to me, a Japanese woman come to me, who made me write a novel for 8 months. And she was an active image that was writing this novel. And to this day, I can't say that I wrote it. It was written by this transpersonal unconscious thing that came to me. And so anyway,
Can you repeat the wording though again about what you're saying about therapy at the end?
Okay,
Evocation of the Paraclete.
All right, so let me read that paragraph once again.
Or I just need the last part.
Okay, so I'm going to read the paragraph. The coming of the Paraclete. Okay, so we're making equivalency between the Paraclete and the Holy Ghost here, right? All right, so but Edinger is analogizing that to the Jungian therapeutic process, okay? And he is saying the coming of the Paraclete we can understand clinically as an image of the resolution of the archetypal transference. Thus, at the conclusion of an analysis, when the issue of the resolution of the transference is uppermost, the analyst must convey precisely the same message. Quote, I must go, and it is to your advantage that I go, and unless I go, your direct inner relation to the self cannot appear. And in order to promote that inner direct relation to the self, we have to encourage active imagination. In the later phases of the analysis, active imagination is the primary agency for the resolution of the transference. Active imagination is the evocation of the Paraclete. Okay, so one of the things about therapy is what happens to us is we will transfer our consciousness about something like mother onto another person. We project it onto someone else. So my mother died, for example, but my mother-in-law is still alive. And so over a period now of years, 10 years or almost 10 years since my mother died, in my consciousness, my mother-in-law has sort of become my mother, okay, and that's a transference. And so in analysis, what happens is when you're interacting with a therapist, you tend to transfer something onto them, like they're your father or they're your mother, depending on their sex. And the therapist has to be very conscious of that transference and break that, okay? Just as Christ broke it by saying that I have to leave you now, okay? The analyst has to break that. He has to say, I'm not your father, okay? And he has to say, I have to break this relationship now, because only then will you find that relationship within yourself.
Does he keep working with the patient then, or?
No.
That's the end.
He's saying that's the end. And so he's teaching.
Active imagination.
They're saying go into active imagination.
Which they've already practiced.
And Right, but what are Christians doing? They're actively imagining God and heaven, taking care of them, and that's something, right? Bill, do you have a comment?
Oh, no, I was just running a little joke through my head.
Is it relevant?
Well, it's interesting that Jung said that it was easier to release the patient in that way if they were, and the order was Jewish, Christian, and Jewish, Catholic, and then Protestant in that order.
Uh-huh.
It was more difficult to get a Protestant to do the Paraclete thing.
Why?
Why did he say?
Why did he say that?
He didn't say one.
Okay, we'll have to get into that in another book, but
So I thought it was an interesting comment. What page was that?
that is the second to last paragraph on page 77, and I'm talking about page 77 of this book, Transformation of the God Image. And so the one other thing that I wanted to get to here was the Imago Dei. He says, I hope you all follow that. If not, well, let's see. All right, so what he's saying is the God image, Imago Dei, therefore is the core archetype of the collective unconscious, is the current agent and creative authority that determines the functioning of all individuals and all organic groupings of individuals. And by organic groupings, I mean all families, tribes, factions, parties, religions, nations, all groupings, small or large, which are unified by mutual identification with an origin, a cause, or a creed. These origins, causes, and creeds will be expressions of the God image, which is the operative central agent in the psyche of that particular group. What that means, then, is that in all conflicts between nations, creeds, different factions of all kinds, each side will be acting out of a commitment to its own version of the God image. In other words, the conflict between any two factions is a conflict within the God image itself. I hope you all, and so this is a reference to the fact that the God image is an image of opposites, and that we have to hold this concept of opposites within us. Okay, I hope you all follow that. If not, we'll go through it further. But this is my effort to elaborate what is condensed in this one sentence, quote, the Imago Dei pervades the whole human sphere and is involuntarily represented by mankind, which is involuntarily represented by mankind. As that becomes visible to you, it changes your whole understanding of the functioning of the collective psyche of humanity, of the way it manifests itself politically and religiously and factionally in all of its various aspects. So it changes everything, because if you understand that every conflict, our red-blue conflict in the United States, our conflict between Christian and Muslim, for example, all other conflicts, those are conflicts that are within the God image, that they're all part of the human condition. And so we have to think of it a little bit differently. It's not my side is right and your side is wrong, because, oh, by the way, if we were to destroy all people in the other side, it would just start again, right? It would just start again, because that's the way we are as human beings.
Yeah, that's the Syzygy.
Pardon? That's the Syzygy, right?
Yeah, that's the pair of opposites.
That's the pair of opposites and you're not going to destroy the other side of the opposite, because if you do, then there's going to be a new Syzygy.
The opposites just, they're like Mandelbrot said,
Yeah, right. And so if there's one thing that we can take out of the freshman year of this reading group is that there are opposites and you can't get away from them. And so therefore you need to be able to rise above them, and hopefully therefore we can find a way to peace. And instead of trying to kill one another because you don't believe as I believe, you might try to find out how you can learn something from the other side. That would be a different attitude, but that's what we need.
But looking at it another way is it could be a fertilizing process as well. You could look at it that way.
What, killing everybody is a fertilizing? What's a fertilizing
Look
process?
at all the in the material sense, all the advancements that come out of war, for instance.
Well, that's the way it works. That's right, and
Well, we have computers,
and so that's what the lesson is, that we need conflict, right? Without conflict, we don't get anything new.
I'm not
And
making a judgment about it. I'm just saying functionally, nature seems to want to be.
nature wants conflict, exactly.
Fire
Eh,
for those trees to grow.
Pardon?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. There's fire for the trees to grow. There's a reason that the eagles took the osprey babies, right? And so it all works out in the end. But the point is that when we have opposites in our relationships, whether they're in our marriages, whether they're in our communities, whether they're in our countries or our religions, we might want to stop and recognize that those opposites are all within us, and what can we learn from the other side. I mean, I'm struggling with it personally, and I'm 70 years old, so I'm still struggling with it, but those are the types of issues that we need to address.